Poco just dropped a brand new phone with a flagship level processor, a 1.5K AMOLED display, and multi-day battery, all for just $399, depending on the variant you buy. So is this, the Poco F7, actually a true flagship killer or just hype? Let's find out. Let's talk unboxing experience to start off with, and it's pretty much business as usual when it comes to the unboxing experiences of a Poco phone. So you get the phone, of course, depending on the variant you want. You then get a SIM ejector pin, the charging cable to be exact actually, and then inside the box you got your manuals, and of course you have your silicone cover, all which is super good. And then the design profile, let's quickly touch on that of the Poco F7. So you can get this in 3 colors. You can get in black, white, and then this silver is sort of a special edition. It does offer a bit more dynamism to the design, has some cool logos and aesthetics. May not be for everyone. It is a fingerprint magnet and a dust magnet as well, but overall the design aesthetics of this phone are really nice, especially at this price point. The display, it's 6.83 inches. You get 3840 PWM dimming as well, on top of a really high quality AMOLED display. And then when you're playing back content on this, it is excellent because it has a really high 90+% screen to body ratio. So colors on this AMOLED display pop really well. You get super dark black areas like you would on a really good AMOLED display, then super good brightness as well. So the colors really pop. And to be fair, watching content on this phone is a real pleasure. No issues at all with anything like poor visibility outside. So if you jam this peak brightness right the way up, it's over 3000 nits of peak brightness. You can then consume content pretty much anywhere in any form of lighting, and it does a really good job. One thing I would say though, just to preface this, it's not an anti-reflective display. So obviously if you're in a fluorescent bulb or an area that's very well lit, you may get some reflections, but generally speaking, the balance of colors, etc., in blacks and general colors as a whole is very good on the Poco F7. The design profile across the whole is quite standard looking, flat front rails, flat rear, and then the camera housing is dual cameras here. You get a main 50 megapixel IMX882 with OIS built in, which is a Sony sensor, and it's really good, and then 8 megapixel ultra wide. That main sensor though in daylight takes super punchy, good contrast laden images, so you're going to get some really good quality. It also offers really good dynamic range throughout the day. No matter what the time, it performs very well. When you move across to like nighttime photos, weirdly, don't know if this is an image processing thing, but it does take quite a dip in its quality. It's not as punchy or as vibrant as I thought it would be, or it does a very good job of handling nighttime photos, which is a bit of a shame, especially when the daytime photos are so good. If you move across to that ultra wide, 8 megapixel ultra wide, and this is probably the biggest downside of this whole phone and its camera system, is that ultra wide. You get soft images, and sometimes those vignettings on the side do get blurry as well, so it can be somewhat unusable. You see this even more because of that low pixel count on that ultra wide. In nighttime photos, again, when you take just your normal photo, it looks decent, but then when you go to ultra wide, it is almost unusable as a whole. 4K 30 or 4K 60 is the max you can get on this phone if you're recording video, and that looks really good. Really good dynamic range, super punchy, great colors, great contrast, very usable footage, especially on the camera. So the camera system as a whole is a little bit of a mixed bag. I'd probably stick to the main lens and the video, and then you've got a really good solid camera performance. One of the highlight things on the Poco F7 is that brand new Snapdragon 8S Gen 4. Now this is pretty much, by all intents and purposes, a flagship chipset because it actually slightly outperforms the 8 Gen 3 on some of those benchmarks, and it does a really good job, especially on this phone. So it does a really good job not only just in thermals but also in performance. So if you're gaming on high-end gaming like we are here on Delta Force, 24 player versus 24 player online, you're gaming, it runs butter smooth. And these are really high, these are not ultimate settings, but they're just the one below max settings, and it performs excellent. Zero issues, any lag or drop frame rates, really high FPS. And also within the gaming component of this is you can actually customize and add an additional boost to the game performance to get even more out of your games on this particular phone, and it performs amazing, zero issues at all, and you get some really, really good feedback. So you're probably thinking at that $399 price point that this phone is going to skimp on some of the AI features that most mid-range or lower non-flagships would have. Well, actually no, it has the entire suite of MIUI AI features. So things like wallpaper generation you can do, as well as AI eraser, amongst a whole host of other really, really unique AI features that are on this phone that probably you wouldn't find on a competitor level phone, such as something like an A56, which is roughly the same price. And then in addition to that, you also get really smooth and great OS as a whole. Now, there is some criticism that this actually copies pretty much iOS, and yes, I would wholeheartedly agree, it copies almost all of it verbatim, which is pretty mad, but it runs really, really well and is done in a way that is more Android-y than it is iOS, but it looks really great. Super smooth transitions, opening and closing apps, everything works super, super well. One other thing to note though, you get 4 years of OS updates and then 6 years of security updates. So in terms of longevity, if you're buying this phone, again, it's very good. It's not at the Samsung 6 and 6 year level, but it's getting very, very close. So the Poco F7's OS and AI performance is excellent. The charging component of the Poco F7 is another element that screams flagship. You get 90 watts of wired charging on a 6,500 mAh battery. Now that battery is not silicon carbon, and you do not get a charger in the box, which is a shame. And you also don't get any wireless charging on the Poco F7. But when you're charging that quickly on such a large battery, hopefully you don't have to often, you can kind of forgive the wireless charging. I think the miss on this is definitely lack of the charging plug in the box. There's a ton to love about the Poco F7, as we've already mentioned, but the cons, let's quickly touch on those. So you obviously get the issues with the lack of ultra-wide performance not being great, which is of course a shame on that dual lens camera on the back. And then of course you don't get any wireless charging, but those two realistically are the only downsides. Every other component of this phone is excellent. The design is super slick, funky, don't necessarily have to have this colorway. The display, that 1.5K, 6.83 inch display looks excellent, super punchy colors, looks great. And then you got a flagship level processor in a Snapdragon 8S Gen 4, combined with that 90 watts of wired charging and 6,500 mAh battery. So that whole thing in its totality, the pros far outweigh the cons. And to be fair, if you take advantage of an early bird offer, you can get this for really, really cheap. In fact, it's probably roughly around $350 you'd pay for this Poco F7, which is insane value for money. In fact, at that sub 500 category, this is probably the phone to buy right now. But let us know in the comment section your thoughts on the Poco F7. And whilst you're there, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Until the next one, we out.